Lost Arkyves presents. Imagine a world teetering on the brink. A darkness descends, not of shadow but of disease. The year is the mid-14th century, and the Black Death, a relentless wave of plague, is sweeping across Europe, leaving unimaginable devastation in its wake. Cities that once bustled with life are reduced to ghost towns, their streets littered with the dead. Food is scarce, trade routes are severed, and fear, palpable and suffocating, grips the hearts of millions. But in the midst of this apocalyptic chaos, a burning question arises, a whisper of accusation that echoes through the annals of history. Did those in power, the kings, the dukes, the wealthy merchants, did they hoard precious supplies while their subjects faced starvation and death? Did they secure their own survival at the expense of the starving masses? Let's step back into that terrifying era. The plague didn't discriminate. It struck down the peasant in his field, the artisan in his workshop, and yes, even the noble in his castle. But the asterisk impact was profoundly different. For the common folk, survival meant clinging to dwindling resources. A loaf of bread, a sack of grain, a hunk of cheese. These were treasures beyond measure when hunger gnawed relentlessly. Now, consider the rulers. The monarchs of Europe, the wealthy landowners, the powerful guild masters. They lived lives of privilege, surrounded by servants, their larders typically well stocked. When the plague hit, their immediate concern, understandably, would have been their own safety and the continuity of their lineage. Castles offered a semblance of protection, and their wealth allowed them to command resources others could only dream of. The historical record, however, is complex. While direct, irrefutable proof of widespread, deliberate hoarding by all rulers is difficult to pinpoint for every single individual, the circumstances strongly suggest that the wealthy and powerful were far better positioned to weather the storm. Think about it. Trade routes collapsed. Ships carrying grain from distant lands were unable to dock. Markets, once vibrant centers of commerce, became plague-ridden death traps. In such a scenario, those with pre-existing stockpiles, those who could afford to pay exorbitant prices for whatever food was available, or those who controlled access to supplies, would inevitably have an advantage. We see accounts of cities imposing strict quarantine measures, but also instances of panicked merchants, desperate to protect their own goods, refusing to sell or dramatically inflating prices. This wasn't necessarily a royal decree, but a widespread, opportunistic behavior born of extreme fear and scarcity. Were kings and queens actively barring starving families from royal granaries? It's unlikely such a blanket policy existed, but the very structure of medieval society meant that royal and noble households had priority access to resources. They had the means to secure what was available, and their estates, often self-sufficient to a degree, provided a buffer against the immediate collapse of external supply lines that devastated urban populations. So, while we may not have a smoking gun pointing to every ruler personally shoveling gold into their private coffers while peasants died outside, the evidence points to a stark reality. The wealthy and powerful, by virtue of their position and resources, were far less likely to experience the gnawing emptiness of true starvation compared to the vast majority of the population. The Black Death exposed and amplified the existing inequalities, leaving the vulnerable exposed to both the plague and its devastating economic fallout, while those at the top, though not immune to fear or loss, had a significantly thicker shield.